The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T, now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata, our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd, our interview sponsor, Follett, and our production sponsor, Countess Communications. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Nestor, President and Chief Executive Officer at Lehigh Valley Health Network. At LVHN, we offer nationally recognized care close to home. Today and every day, our focus is on the health of our community. We know that a healthy community paves the way for a healthy economy. We're proud to partner with Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation as we work together to make the Lehigh Valley strong, vibrant, and safe.
Hello, I'm Don Cunningham, President and CEO of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. Welcome to another episode of our new executive interview series. In the last 18 months here in the Lehigh Valley, we've had incredible amount of change in the leadership of our largest employers and biggest companies here in the Lehigh Valley. And under the current situation, we can't meet and mix and mingle as we'd like to. So we developed this series for you to get to know some of our new executives and leaders who are shaping not only our economy, but the community and culture of the Lehigh Valley. And we're very thrilled today to have Kevin Orfan with us. Kevin is the president of Sharp Corporation. And Kevin, you came here in March of last year to take on your new role at Sharp. And we're glad to have you here, not only in the Lehigh Valley, but to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. That's correct. I relocated here from the Chicago area actually in May of last year, May of 2019. And took on a position at Sharp a little bit earlier in the year, so in March. But I'm thrilled to be here today with you, Don, and obviously very happy to be in the Lehigh Valley as well.
Hey, Kevin, I want to talk a little bit about you and your background, but before that, let's talk a little bit about Sharp. Very common and very well-known name, but a lot of folks out there may not know how significant of an employer and how large of an operation that Sharp has here in the Lehigh Valley.
Sure. Well, so first of all, it's not Sharp Electronics, so we don't make televisions. Sharp has actually been around for a long time. They started in Conshohocken in 1952, so we're going on 70 years in Pennsylvania. So what Sharp does is we really have two primary businesses. We have all in pharmaceutical and biotech. So we do pharmaceutical packaging for commercial supply, and we have a relatively large clinical trial services business as well. In terms of packaging, there's really several main areas. So we do blistering and also bottling of tablets and capsules. And so those would typically be would be oral solids, right? We do primary packaging, which means that we're coming into contact with the capsules and tablets. We're putting them into blister packs, we're putting them into bottles. We do a lot of vial labeling as well. So this is more what we refer to as secondary packaging, where we're not actually coming in contact with the drug itself because they're liquids typically.
So the medicine will come in just unbundled, unpackaged.
Correct. Yes, so it's what we refer to as bulk. And so in the case of oral solids, tablets and capsules, they come in bags or drums. In the case of the vials or prefilled syringes, they're already in those containers, and then we do downstream secondary packaging. So we'll do the labeling, we'll do the package inserts, we do the artwork, we do the cartons, really the packaging that you would see, if you were either using it, if it was a OTC product or a product that you would buy over the counter, or certainly a lot of what we do is used in clinics and in hospitals as well. So that's the commercial side. We do a lot of auto injector and pen assembly as well. So products that you may be familiar with, like an EpiPen, for example. Right. So we do that. And then on the clinical side of our business, it's a little bit different. We work with customers anywhere from pre-clinic all the way through the clinical trial process and then into commercialization as well. And again,
So what will you do in the clinical trial process? Like, what's your role in that process?
so early on, we may help the sponsor company, our client, with formulation development. We can actually do small-scale manufacturing of tablets and capsules as well, if we need to do that. We will manufacture or source the placebos as well, if it's a blinded trial. We'll do then the labeling for not only the active product, but also for the placebo, so that it's transparent to the clinician or the healthcare provider who's administering the drug to the patient in the clinical trial, so they don't know which one's getting which product, whether it's the placebo or the active. We do comparator sourcing as well, so if there's a trial that's up against an existing product on the market, we'll source those products as well. Yeah. And then we do all the packaging and labeling, and then track the distribution of those products to the clinic or to patients' homes if that's where it's being administered.
Really is. And Sharp has 4 facilities in Lehigh Valley and growing, right?
We are definitely growing. So overall, Sharp's got roughly 1,900 employees in total. We have 3 main facilities in the Lehigh Valley. So we have Allentown, which is our largest facility. We have 5 buildings in our Allentown campus. We have our U.S. and global headquarters for our clinical business that I just described is in Bethlehem, only a few miles from here. We have a new facility that we just acquired in Macungie as well earlier this year. So we have 3 campuses or facilities in Lehigh Valley. We have the original facility, which we continue to expand in Conshohocken, as I mentioned. And then we have 3 facilities in Europe, 1 in the UK, 1 in Belgium, and 1 in the Netherlands.
And roughly how many employees do you have based here in the Lehigh Valley?
In terms of regular full-time employees, we've got roughly 1,200 full-time employees. We also have a lot of temporary workers that are typically full-time as well, and in many cases they've been with us for many, many years as well. So we've got, on any given day, we employ somewhere around 400 to 450 temporary workers as well. So in the Lehigh Valley, on any given day, we're around 1,600 people.
And that's what's significant about that. Makes you really one of the larger employers in the Lehigh Valley. There aren't that many companies anymore that employ more than 1,000 employees. What is the typical skill set or type of job that a Sharp worker here in the Lehigh Valley has?
So it because of the nature of the business that we have, so we have a lot of professionals. So we have business development people, salespeople that are, used to be pre-COVID, of course, out calling on pharmaceutical and biotech companies. Now they're doing that virtually, of course. A very large quality organization, a large group of technical people with engineering backgrounds, scientists, PhD scientists that do some of the formulation, development, and analytical services that I described before in our clinical business. We also have a very large number of what we call project managers or program managers that work with our pharmaceutical customer partners to help sort of develop and transfer their products into our network and into our processes as well. The bulk of the employees we have, though, are what we refer to as operations people, so that are in the packaging rooms actually doing the physical packaging using a very, very wide variety of equipment, of course.
And I would imagine the Lehigh Valley is a great location in part because of sitting here right in the middle of the pharma belt, if you will, out of suburban Philadelphia and in northern Jersey, where a lot of the large pharmaceutical companies are manufacturing products. So you've got quick access to the Lehigh Valley for kind of the ancillary support elements that Sharp is involved in.
Yeah, it certainly is, Don. And so Sharp made the decision long before I got here, back in 2004, to expand from Conshohocken, where they started, to the Allentown facility as well. And so we've been here for 16 years or so. And in part for that very reason. So as you know, the pharmaceutical industry in general is pretty heavily concentrated on the East Coast. A lot of companies in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Massachusetts, et cetera. And so geographically, we are very conveniently located to many of our customers.
Right, and then of course the Lehigh Valley, as we talk about a lot at LVEDC, and I think why in large part we've seen such growth of manufacturing here and logistics and distribution is that 40% of the consumers in the United States located here on the East Coast are within about a 5 or 6 hour truck drive of the Lehigh Valley. Mm-hmm. So it makes us this great hub for producing and moving product to a large consumer base. how have you found the Lehigh Valley in terms of bringing in talent, finding the talent you need in a variety of different skill sets and education levels that the Sharp employs?
Yeah, generally I would say pretty good. We have continued to add a significant number of employees, certainly in the Lehigh Valley and also in our Conshohocken facility, as I mentioned. And I think since I've arrived 18 months ago, we've probably added 250 or 300 people, something like that. So fortunately, we've been pretty lucky at being able to find the talent we need, but also, skilled workers, right, and also workers that, do critical work for us every day, in our operations areas as well. So far so good. We actually took advantage of a bit of a downturn in the economy here during COVID, and went on a pretty aggressive hiring campaign, mainly locally initially, and really trying to increase our bench strength and bring in more skilled workers. Some of the folks that I talked about before, program management, a lot of quality people. Another area that's really important for us in our business is what we refer to as mechanics, and these people are critical. We have many pieces of very expensive and very sophisticated equipment that needs to be maintained and needs to be set up from product to product. And so that's probably been one of the toughest areas, is not only retaining the mechanics we have, but because it's very competitive for this skill set, but also bringing in new talent as well in that area.
Now, I would imagine then a lot of your facilities operate in pretty much a clean room environment because you're packaging, so you have probably an interesting looking production floor.
We do. You wouldn't know it if you looked at the outside of our buildings, which is actually by design. We don't necessarily want to advertise what we do, given the nature of what we do. But you're right. There's just in terms of the Lehigh Valley facilities, over the last several years, we've invested over $100 million in our Lehigh Valley buildings alone. And so it's facility upgrades. It's really what's important in our industry because of the nature of what we do, the importance of quality, and the importance of really keeping the sites contemporary. The facilities have to be state-of-the-art, and the equipment has to be state-of-the-art as well. And so we put a lot of money into equipment. We're continuing to try to stay ahead of the trends in the market as well with new equipment. And to your point, we don't work in sterile environments, but we do work in very clean environments. And so our employees our colleagues that are working in our production areas are accustomed to wearing PPE. They wear gowns and masks, they wear shoe covers, they wear uniforms, and in some cases face shields and things like that, depending on what types of drugs that they're dealing with. We have very sophisticated air handling systems in all of our rooms. We're turning over the air in our rooms 4 to 5 times an hour. So it's a relatively safe environment in general, and I would say pretty safe even with COVID, because we do have social distancing. We have, of course,
Has it become more challenging to maintain production levels, output during COVID, or because you've already kind of have those safeguards built in, was it more minimal for a company like Sharp?
It was and continues to be somewhat challenging. Early on, it was very challenging, but we were all in the same boat together where we really had to figure out, what do we need to do to keep our employees safe? We are in an essential business, so we had to continue to operate. We have roughly 400 of our colleagues who are remote working as well, and so all of them, all of a sudden, myself included, went from working in an office environment to working at home. So we had to do a lot to continue to support them from a technology and security perspective. But then in terms of our plant operations, we did a lot, like so many other companies had to do in terms of social distancing. We are essentially a 24/7 business, and so we run 3 shifts a day. And one of the challenges that we had in terms of social distancing was to ensure that we didn't have hundreds of colleagues coming in contact with one another at shift change. And so we shortened our shifts to try to put, roughly an hour gap between the shift changes. So we lost some production time in doing that, but we were able to keep those folks apart in doing so. We put in a number in some of our packaging rooms where we have a lot of operators. We had to put in dividers on some of the lines to separate them. We reduced the number of people on some of the lines as well to try to keep them safe. But I have to say our colleagues have been phenomenal through this whole process. I mean, especially early on when there was so much uncertainty about, how serious the disease was or the virus was. Sure. And the fact that I think they trusted Sharp. I think we communicated well with them, as we just discussed. We have a clean work environment. We put in a lot of additional safety measures, including temperature taking every day and so forth. But nonetheless, there's still a certain amount of risk that our colleagues faced coming to work every day, and yet they continue to come to work every day.
And it made a big, challenging job that you have a little bit more challenging very early into your tenure of being president.
Indeed,
right?
it did.
Let's talk a little bit about your trajectory into Sharp. You spent your whole career pretty much has been in the pharmaceutical industry, right? You were coming to Sharp from, was it Abbott Laboratories? Or?
Most recently, I was with Pfizer.
Pfizer,
right.
Okay.
So I started my career a long time ago with Abbott Laboratories.
Abbott Laboratories,
yes.
yeah. And what type of roles were you in at Pfizer and other companies?
So I was with Pfizer just under 3 years, so I was there a relatively short amount of time. I was responsible for their third-party drug product contract manufacturing business. So then prior to Pfizer, I was with a company called Hospira, which is headquartered in Chicago. And over the last, out of 30 plus years in the industry overall, the last 10 years, I've been in third-party pharmaceutical services. So not only at Hospira for part of my career there, but also with Pfizer, and then so it was a natural extension for me to move into Sharp, which is of course also third-party services.
So in most of your professional career and growing up, you lived in the Midwestern part of the U.S., correct?
I did.
Most recently before moving to the Lehigh Valley, Chicago area?
Correct.
Yeah. So you moved to the Lehigh Valley 18 months ago. Now it's been a little bit kind of closed down the last 6 months or so, but how are you and your wife are finding life here in the Lehigh Valley?
We've thoroughly enjoyed it. This is really a nice area, and we moved around a fair amount over the course of my career. I think we moved 7 or 8 times, including just under 3 years in the UK. So we have moved. We often would move back to the Chicago area, which is where the companies that I worked for were headquartered. So it's kind of there and back. But I'd never lived on the East Coast before, and so this was really a great opportunity from a personal standpoint to live somewhere we haven't lived before. And I think as we talked before, my 2 children are adults and they still live in the Chicago area, so it was even easier for us my wife and I to pack up and move to the East Coast. But it's a wonderful area. We're really enjoying Lehigh Valley, as you know, in northern Illinois, where we lived before, north of Chicago. The topography is flat. It's really not that exciting, and really, the topography here is beautiful. It's really a great community. It's got, it's not that big. It feels like a community. I think that the people here are hardworking. They're authentic. People are really nice as well. And I like the fact that, needless to say, we're also very close to other large cities like New York, of course, and Boston and Philadelphia, and and so on. So it's really a wonderful area. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish more restaurants and shopping and other things were open. We missed, of course,
I know.
Music Fest this summer as well, but I'm sure that'll all be back next year.
Well, it's clear you've become a full-blooded Lehigh Valleyan in a short period of time. That's great. Now, you grew up in, was it Wisconsin? Yeah. And a little interesting point, your mom was the mayor of your hometown, right?
She was.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she was in city government for a long time, probably more than 30 years, 35 years, something like that, and was the mayor of the city for many of those years as well.
What was the name of it? What's the name of it?
It was a relatively small town just outside of Madison, which is the capital of Wisconsin, called Sun Prairie. And it grew. In fact, it was the fastest growing city in the state of Wisconsin for maybe a decade. So it's not that small anymore. I think it's 40 or 45,000 people, something like that. So a nice sized city. But then when towards the end of her time in city government, she started a economic development corporation with a number of other community members in our town, and that's just booming now. And there's a lot of big businesses that they've been able to bring in over the years, and it's a thriving community, to say the least.
Well, I feel a real connection to your mom.
So do I.
It's good. We share that in common, even though I've never had the opportunity. But I know the first time we were talking on the phone, and I was taking on explaining what Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation is, and Kevin said, "No, I understand real well how that works." My mom started one back in Wisconsin, and and as I was telling you on the phone, LVDC was started here in the mid-1990s and 1995 by the business leadership of the community at a time when the economy was changing, tremendously, when the end of steel was on the horizon, and what one time was we had a lot of textile mills and a lot of clothing production, but that started moving offshore. So there was a real need to change strategies to kind of shift and try to capitalize on a new economy. And fast forward now 25 years later, this is our 25th year anniversary. Things have really worked out well in the Lehigh Valley economy, getting into a much more diverse number of businesses than we were back in previous decades here. So, and it's really been done regionally, because we're two counties, Lehigh and Northampton, the three principal cities of Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, and a nice infusion of both private sector and public sector, which I think often we're asked about. Well, why have things worked here better than other places? And in addition to the location and the advantages of the colleges and the quality workforce, I think it's been that. It's that sense of public-private working together in the community that has really been successful. And our board has benefited greatly from the CEOs and the COOs and the presidents of helping to steer that economic direction. So, and we're hopeful that Sharp and yourself will be involved as we go forward. So, just another quick question on your background. What, on a personal level, if we were just to meet up at a cocktail party and we're talking about things that you personally like to do, that you've been involved in over the years, sports or community things, what would that be? What do you like to do when you're not running Sharp Packaging?
When I'm not running Sharp
Corporation.
Yeah. So very active outdoors. I like to dabble in a lot of different things. I'm not necessarily great at perhaps any of them, but I like to play golf. I love the outdoors in terms of fishing and hunting. Okay. We do a lot of wakeboarding and water skiing in the wintertime, snow skiing. I haven't skied out here yet, but hopefully there will be some snow this winter. And be able to
we haven't had much snow.
No, last winter there was none.
Yeah,
exactly. I had to go out west, but it's spending time with my family, of course, and friends. And as you can imagine, now that we've established where I came from, I'm an avid Green Bay Packer fan and also a Wisconsin Badger fan. So, which is also, so at least the NFL's playing, but obviously the Big Ten is not yet.
Yeah, it's not. So you've been to Lambeau Field, I imagine, a few times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, something I've always wanted to get to. There's certain sports stadiums that are kind of a must on the list, right? Wrigley Field in Chicago. It seems like the Midwest area has a lot of them.
There are a few.
Lambeau Field.
You definitely have to get there.
Yeah, I definitely want to. So looking ahead for Sharp, what do you see as some of the major opportunities or the challenges that the company would be facing over the next 2 to 3 years?
So the industry that we're in is really dynamic, and it's really growing, and it's a large industry as well. So the outsourcing pharmaceutical services space, if you will, on a global basis is around $36 billion. The segment that we're in currently is roughly 12 to 14 billion. So it's a big industry, and equally importantly, it continues to grow at a pretty rapid rate. So it's growing at about 6 to 8% a year, and that's in part due to demographics, of course, aging populations around the world, but also because of the rapid pace of pharmaceutical and biologic development that's going on as well. And so I think we're very well positioned to continue to take advantage of those market trends as well as the demographics that I touched on, and continue to serve more and more customers and more patients as well. So how are we going to do that? So one of the things I think I touched on a few minutes ago is we recently acquired the assets and the facility of an established pharmaceutical packaging company in Macungie. And so with that, we in turn hired about 125 employees that were there and were experienced as well, and brought them into Sharp. And we just did that a few months ago. And so that's added square footage for us in the Lehigh Valley, which we desperately needed. It added warehouse space that we desperately needed as well. And we were also, able to bring on 125 wonderful new colleagues into Sharp as well. And so that was really one of the critical steps in our process to support the growth going forward. We continue to make very large investments in our Bethlehem facility on the clinical side, and then as well as our Allentown and now Macungie sites from an equipment and facility standpoint, to just try to keep up with the growing demand in the marketplace. So I think we're well positioned. Our parent company, UDG Healthcare, which is based in Dublin, has been very supportive of us as well, and they continue to provide capital for us to make those investments in the business. So that's really, that's part of the equation, is making sure that we have the capacity to support the market. But then the other part of it is to make sure we have the people as well. And that's probably the bigger challenge, is making sure that we have the right people with the right skill sets that can continue to do the work that we need to do.
So what you mentioned that your parent company is based in Ireland. What is the connection back with the Irish parent company? Do they have several holdings in the U.S. or just Sharp?
They have several holdings in the U.S. So there's really two main divisions or companies within our parent company. It is a public company. They're a PLC, which means they're traded on the London Stock Exchange, and they're part of the FTSE 250. So a nice sized company, maybe 9,000 employees in total. Across all of UDG. Our sister division is called Ashfield, and they primarily focus on providing advisory services, clinical services, patient services, consulting services, and medical support, things like that for the healthcare community as well on a global basis. And they've got a number of facilities in the U.S. and in particular in Pennsylvania. A large facility in Fort Washington, another large facility in downtown Philadelphia. So that's kind of the setup between Sharp and Ashfield.
Okay. So you get to, are you required to go to Ireland much for?
Not recently.
Not recently. No.
It typically, so we have, it's a relatively small number of people that are in Ireland, provide a lot of support, corporate support functions for us and for Ashfield as well, around finance, HR, IT. Legal, et cetera. And so once we start traveling again, yes, I will be going to Ireland on a pretty regular basis. And as I mentioned before, we have Sharp facilities in Europe as well.
Yeah, well, Kevin, it's been really great to meet you and get a chance to talk with you. And it's great for the Lehigh Valley that Sharp is here. I'm glad we got a chance to sit down because, as I said to you off camera, I think a lot of folks here don't realize the size of the operation here in the Lehigh Valley, your significant role in the pharmaceutical industry. And we as an economic development corporation have every year look at pharma as a target to grow because we feel we have the talent and the access to market. And as you pointed out earlier, we sit here kind of in the East Coast pharma belt, much of it surrounding the Lehigh Valley. But there are elements of it here and growing. Just real quick as we kind of move to conclude, what would you say is the opportunities for the Lehigh Valley, specifically in the sector of pharmaceutical, down the road the next 5-10 years?
So in general or for Sharp?
Well, in Sharp or in general, yeah.
Well, I think as long as there is a diverse and robust and skilled workforce in the Lehigh Valley, I think you will continue to attract not only investments from our company specifically, but also investments, I think, from other companies as well. Certainly the tax environment in neighboring states is not perhaps quite as attractive as it is here, and so I think that in and of itself is a draw. Housing costs are lower. As well from some of our neighboring states. So I think we're going to continue to see investment in this area, in the industry in general. One of the interesting dynamics which you'd be very familiar with is there is a move, and we'll see how successful it is ultimately, but to onshore more pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the U.S. And there was some exposure to the fragility of the supply chain a few years ago and during a hurricane in Puerto Rico, and it's been really exacerbated, I think, because of COVID. And it's very clear that there's an awful lot of drug, what's referred to as drug substance, the bulk drug that's coming over from China and from India and other countries around the world. And so the president and the administration has made it very clear they want to see more manufacturing of pharmaceuticals and medical devices and even PPE in the United States. And I think that bodes well not only for our industry and for Sharp, but I think potentially for the Lehigh Valley as well. And if I were you, I would be very aggressive going after other pharmaceutical and biotech companies and medical device companies in the region and even in the state to talk about the attractiveness of this area. And I would suspect that you should be able to recruit other companies into the area. And if you need help, let me know.
Thank you. And there's no better way we could conclude the segment. We're thrilled Sharp is here and you're here and it's growing. And thank you everyone for joining us with this conversation with Kevin Orfan, who's the president of a Sharp Corporation. Thank you.
We're all doing what we can to stop the spread of COVID-19, and that includes wearing a mask when out in public. How you remove your mask matters too. Take it off from the back and be careful not to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Make sure to wash your hands when you're done. You should also wash your mask after each use. Keep masks you've worn in a sealed container until you can wash them. And remember, my mask protects you and your mask protects me.
The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T Now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata, our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd, our interview sponsor, Follett, and our production sponsor, Countess Communications. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.